Alright, congratulations. You've made it this far into the course. I'm very proud of you. And assuming that you've done all the practice and you've done all the work like we've asked you to, I'm guessing that you're a pretty solid technician by now, and that you've understood and you're aware of the assembly and the structure of most of the common smartphones today. In our last section, we're going to talk about some expenses of screens and micro parts, replacement parts, and how you can make a profit and the price range that you could charge for a customer. But before we do that, I want to go over another repair technique. It's called soldering. We have a technician with us that's been involved in the soldering business for I think 15 or 16 years, so he's an expert. So we're going to show you some videos on micro soldering, like certain phones that still require a solder gun, such as the Galaxy S3 to repair the charging port, the microphone, and even the volume buttons on the Galaxy S4, and even the power button on the Galaxy S4 and whatnot. Soldering has become more and more irrelevant for cell phone repair these days. With all these flex cables, everything seems to be connected with a flex cable. The charging port, the battery, the LCD, the digitizer flex, everything. Whereas the phone prior to that, the iPhone 3 and the 3GS, even to remove the battery, you would have to desolder and solder it. To remove certain things, you would have to desolder it. So it's sort of irrelevant. If this was about 3 years ago, then I think soldering would have been one of our top sections. It would have been a huge moneymaker. But today, it's been reduced to the rules of simply the charging port or volume keys or power keys on some smartphones. And then if you want to get into some really complicated repairs, like the iPhone 4, for example, while you're removing the back camera, you can accidentally knock off the back camera capacitor, which is really a tiny micro component, and that can actually be desoldered and soldered on. But it requires a lot of skill. It requires a lot of experience. So that's a repair that we really wouldn't recommend for a few reasons. Not a whole lot of people would be willing to pay more than $30 or $40 for that kind of repair, because usually their phones are going to be within warranty, so they can just get a new one by dropping it off to the warranty center. So you're not going to get a whole lot of those repairs. And even if you do, you probably won't be able to get away with the charging too much. So my strongest recommendation is actually stay away from that repair if possible. But if you absolutely have to, and if you have some good background and experience in micro soldering, then go for it. But it's one of the more dangerous repairs, because when you solder a motherboard, in removing some of these pieces, sometimes you have to use hot air, which we're going to show you in the next 3 of our videos. You can sometimes overheat the motherboard, and when you overheat the logic board, it can damage it. It can just completely stop working, even with all the protocol and protecting it and covering everything else and just focusing in on that one area. It's still a dangerous, okay, maybe not dangerous, but it's still a risky repair. So once again, unless you're really experienced in soldering, I wouldn't really recommend that repair. And also, to teach you everything that there is to know about soldering, I wouldn't be able to fit it into this section. We would have to ask our technician, who's the soldering expert, to create an entire course on just soldering on Udemy. So it's a huge, vast piece of knowledge. Like I said, I really don't think we could fit it in this one section. But we will try our best to go over some of the basics and how you can use that in repairing cell phones, and how it specifically applies to cell phones. So for this section, you're going to need obviously a workstation, a solder station that has a hot air gun and a solder gun. Now you're going to want a small solder tip, and you're also going to want a small hot air tip. You're going to also want a wet sponge to shock off the solder residue on your solder gun. You're going to want some solder, some rosin core solder, preferably low melting point. You're also going to want some solder flux, some solder paste, and you're also going to want some a solder wick, preferably one of the smaller ones, to help you in all of these repairs. Okay, so it's going to be really small micro repairs, so we're going to try our best to get a magnifying glass, a helping hands in the way to show you exactly what we're doing. But like I said, once again, for the soldering, if I were you, for the two main reasons, I would restrict it. I would reduce it to just the microphone or the charging port repair, and not really any logic board repair, because number one, you're not going to get a whole lot of these repairs. I've been doing this for 7 years. Maybe we'll get them once every 2 months, and then number two, they're not very lucrative. Because no one really, unless you live in an area where people love to pay a lot of money for that, it's just for some reason, I can't put my finger on it. Not a whole lot of people want to pay a lot of money for something like that. Um, and if I could add a third reason, it's actually sort of risky as well. So you're doing a pretty risky repair uh, for low profit, and at the same time you're risking damaging their phone entirely, which now you're gonna have to cough up a brand new phone for them. So once again, my my encouragement is stay away from it for those three reasons. But if you want to do it anyways, then watch these next three videos, and we'll also link some other videos of how people have desoldered and resoldered logic boards, such as how people have removed capacitors, and how people have resoldered capacitors and whatnot, and IC chips as well. So again, you're doing this at your own risk. We're going to attach some videos that we found were really helpful that aren't ours, and we're also going to put 3 or 4 of our own videos. Watch it, and if you feel confident enough to do it, then by all means go for it, and good luck.